Turks. Huge show ahead for you guys. A little bit later in the program, the music stops. Oh, there it is. Okay. A little bit later in the program, rectal feeding. Now, I'm going to tell you what that should be called. We're going to give the defense of rectal feeding by conservatives and Republicans. Yes, they have a defense of it. And then in the second hour, a story that I might be even more angry about than torture, believe it or not. That's the Cleveland cop reaction to people protesting the shooting of Tamir Rice and Jonathan Crawford. Those are the guys who did not have real guns. They had toy guns, including a 12-year-old who was shot dead. And the cops are so mad that anybody would protest. All right, I will save my curses for those guys, which will be literal, for later in the program. That'll be in the second hour. In the beginning, of course, we're going to start with Sydney, and we're going to start with Dick Cheney as well. Plenty of anger to go around for everybody. Just a small note to the folks on the live stream. Very hectic day, including plenty of shootings, unfortunately, in the world. So sorry for the late start. Now, if you remember, you haven't noticed that at all, God bless. All right, let's get going. So, we have a hostage situation that has been resolved, but not in a great way, in Australia. In Sydney, a crazy guy had taken over a cafe Sunday morning. He was there for about 16 hours, and then finally cops swarmed in because they heard shots inside the cafe. So they felt that they had no choice.
I'm now hearing extremely loud explosions, gunfire.
Indeed, Siobhan, we can see live pictures here from
And there you have it. That's them storming in. They say they didn't want to, but they had to when they heard the sounds. Of course, all that will be verified later. At least 2 people have died. It is unclear whether they died in the crossfire or whether they were shot by the hostage taker, who we now know is Man Haron Moniz. He is an Iranian refugee who is totally out of his mind. He had put up a flag that had a Muslim sign on it, the Shahada, but that sign is universal. It just says that Islam is the true religion and Muhammad is the prophet of Allah, right? So that sign by itself doesn't mean anything. It could be used for good. It could be used for bad. Everybody's wondering if it was the ISIS flag, or if he got the ISIS flag wrong. He has nothing to do with ISIS. He is what they're calling a lone wolf. In fact, let's talk about that as soon as we get this sidebar off, because that is definitely not the shooter. Okay. In fact, that dude's got other issues, but this is not among them. Okay. So the guy here who took the hostages in Sydney is Man Haron Moniz. He is an Iranian refugee. He is what his former lawyer describes as a one-off random individual. It's not a concerted terrorism event or act, they explain. It's damaged goods individual who's done something outrageous. Now, he put up the flag that has the Muslim Shahada, but that does not represent ISIS. It doesn't represent anything. It's on the Saudi flag as well. I don't have any love for the Saudis, but just the fact that is put out there means absolutely nothing, okay? He is, by the way, Shia. I assume that he is, since he's an Iranian refugee. ISIS is Sunni. They have no connection to one another. In fact, of course, the Muslim community in Australia has condemned him strongly. They say they condemn this criminal act unequivocally, because, people are going to start to say, hey, wait, why didn't the moderate Muslims speak out? Well, of course they have, very, very loudly, if you're willing to hear them. That's the Australian National Imams Council and the Grand Mufti of Australia. So we find out, it turns out there is a Grand Mufti of Australia. So now, even Prime Minister Tony Abbott says that the perpetrator here had a long history of violent crime, infatuation with extremism, and mental instability. He had been sending letters to families of Australian soldiers that had fought in the wars that were vicious, and he'd already gotten hundreds of hours of community service for that. He was actually wanted as an accessory in the death of his ex-wife. He had been charged with sexual assault dating back to 2002. So a long history of crime and instability. This guy appears to be a lone nut. Now, of course, when you have a Muslim who's a lone nut, everybody believes that it's part of the global jihad. Now, I don't know what's in this guy's head. Obviously, he did. I imagine the sexual assaults he didn't really have anything to do with Islam. So obviously, this guy is to some degree motivated by ideologies. You can tell from the crazy letters that he wrote to the families of the soldiers in Australia, and by the fact that he put up that flag. He has, as you can see here, protested in street corners before. Like, this is a whatever. You can say it's a kooky protest. You can say it's a perfectly fine protest. But this speaks partly to what he cares about, but not to much else. I mean, you'll see plenty of people who do this and then don't take over cafes, obviously, and shoot people and kill people. 4 others have been wounded, by the way, and apparently one person died of a heart attack, so that brings the death toll up to 3. As you look at this overall, I'm a little worried that we have accidentally given terrorists a part of what they want. So I don't know what category you put this guy in. Look, if he was just a random Australian who was a white Christian, would they have called him a terrorist? No way. You know that, right? You know it for a fact. Doesn't matter where you live, Australia, United States, etc. They would have just said he's crazy. Oh, he's motivated by, here in the U.S., it's often right-wing ideology. There's a guy in Norway, etc. But they would have said, oh, he's just one crazy guy. Now, of course, since he's Muslim, everybody's worried, oh my God, terrorism, etc., right? But when you give him such a big stage, this is kind of what he wanted. This is what I hate about the coverage that we have of the shooters here in America. They're looking for glory in their insane, misguided ways, whether they're right-wing nuts, whether they're Muslim fundamentalist nuts, or they just feel like people diss them in high school, or they're unpopular, or they hate women. Whatever it is, they're looking for glory in their own crazy minds. And so we stopped all world news to cover this because we saw some sort of Muslim flag and we thought it was an Iranian guy who did this, hostage taking. I hope to God and that it does not encourage others to do likewise. I mean, if ISIS is taking notes, they're like, wow, we didn't coordinate this. And by all accounts of the authorities, he had no connection to ISIS. But boy, did that get everybody's attention. Maybe we ought to try that. Stop giving them so much attention. When there's a Muslim involved, the whole world flips out. We all stopped for 16 hours just to see what would happen. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, 1, it's super important. Those people's lives matter. 2, when it's a hostage situation, you can't help but be fascinated by it and be so concerned about the people inside that cafe. We all were, right? And I don't know that there's a good answer to this, but I do know that in some ways, before this guy, died, he wound up getting a piece of what he wanted. The fame that he wanted, in his own insane mind, the glory that he wanted. And so that bothers me to my core. And there's no good answers on that, because what are you going to tell the news? It's a fascinating situation everybody cares about. Don't go cover it. I understand that. But I hate that this guy got a part of what he wanted in that sense, even if it was the last thing that he did. So that's the current situation. It has been resolved. Not in a good way since people died. Of course, we all wish there was a way to resolve this without that happening. This idiot was a self-styled sheik. Whatever the hell that means. He shut down this whole center city of Sydney, and there's the Reserve Bank of Australia that was shut down, government offices that were shut down. And, look, in the old days, there used to be a lot of kidnappings, and we found a way to bring that down through, honestly, a couple things. One, including very harsh sentences for kidnapping, right? Now, people realized that once they did a kidnapping or they took hostages, there's no way out. We weren't going to give them what they wanted. They weren't going to get a helicopter and money. That was the old days, right? But these days, sometimes all people want is the attention. So they know they're not, some people will know they're not getting out of the situation, but they'll pursue it anyway because as we look to see what they have done, we've given them what they want already. Yeah, I'm afraid that that is a recipe for a lot of heartache going forward. Okay, now I want to tell you about a situation here in America. Now, you might be surprised to find out that on the same day that we have the Sydney hostage taking and then the shooting that happened once the police had to swarm in after they heard loud noises, which they thought was perhaps the hostage taker hurting some of the people he'd taken hostage. So obviously several people died there. But in the U.S., we had a shooting where the person who did the shooting is still at large, and the number of people killed is doubled what happened in Australia. The reason you might be surprised is because it's gotten almost no coverage so far. It's a shooting in Pennsburg, Pennsylvania. It's done by a guy, former Marine Corps Sergeant Bradley William Stone. He shot 6 people in the middle of the night in 3 different instances, and then he's in the wind right now. The authorities have not caught him. They have that particular area, which is about 50 miles north of Philadelphia, a major city in the U.S., locked down. They've told people don't go outside your house until we've got this thing figured out. If all of the press have arrived there, it is news to us as it is happening today, right? Now, they might get more media coverage later. The reason I tell you this and I give you this perspective is because it's another day in America. Oh, when we have a mass shooter who kills 6 people, twice as much people as the incident in Sydney, and he's not even caught yet. So there's the same kind of drama, like, oh my God, he's in the woods, he's in the houses, he's in town, and he's near a major metropolitan area. Where is he? Well, nothing. Because to us, every day is Sydney. Every day there's a mass shooting. So, ho-hum, 6 people got killed, who cares? Now, could we have gotten warning signs that this guy might do this? Well, he wrote on his Facebook page, "If you fuck with me, I'll kill you all." That's a decent warning sign. He also said, be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet, which apparently he went on to carry out. So it turns out the 6 people he killed, he knew. Now, there are reasons why it's not as large a story as Sydney. I get that. There's real reasons and reasonable facts that back that up. So, for example, he knows the guys, the people that he killed. So people think, well, okay, maybe it's an internal family affair, doesn't have to do with me, I don't have to be scared, right? Well, that's, by the way, not true, because the cops say he's armed and very dangerous, and if you see him, he's in military fatigue. Last time they saw him, don't go anywhere near him, report it to the authorities, and go get away from him, because the guy could not be more dangerous, and he's out and loose right now. But I get that, hey, look, he killed people he knows, that happens all the time, and that's a slightly different situation. Of course, another issue here is, he's not Muslim. In fact, ironically, he got a service medal for the global war on terrorism. And so I don't know if you put that in the reasonable or unreasonable category, so why people are not panicked or nobody cares. But there's another reason why here in the U.S. we find it not a big deal, because he had a gun. And so, like in Sydney, it was a big deal that he has a gun. He goes into the cafe, he holds these people hostage, etc. For us, everybody's got a gun. So if somebody says, I'm going to kill everybody I know, well, it's very likely here in the U.S. that they have a gun, and decent chance they're going to carry it out. But we feel like we're trapped in this one giant, horrible experiment where there's nothing we can do about it. It's the learned helplessness that psychologists have taught us about, which we just lie down and we just take the shock after shock after shock. Oh, okay, another gunman on the loose. We haven't caught him yet. He's killed all these different people in different sets of shootings. He might kill us next. Well, ho-hum, another day in America. And that's what we have right now. He's still at large, and it doesn't appear that a lot of people care very much at all. Crazy, man. We live in a crazy, crazy country. Okay. Now, speaking of crazy country and mass violence, we go to Dick Cheney. Okay. Now, let me begin to tell you this story, and and this will take some time. So we'll start it in this segment, and I'll finish it in the next segment for you, okay? Dick Cheney, former Vice President of the United States, who spearheaded the torture program that we ran here in America, has decided that he's going to come out and defend it. No one's surprised by that. He's decided to go on Meet the Press, which used to be a defining show for challenging politicians in America. Now, this, of course, become a bit of a joke, and I'll tell you why. Back in 2004, we found out that Dick Cheney's office thought it was actually the best place to get their message out. We knew this because Scooter Libby, remember, was charged, who used to be with the vice president, because of the leaks that they had and that were illegal, right? So there was testimony and internal emails we found out from Dick Cheney's office at the time. That's about 10 years ago. They said as to how they can get their message out. Option 1, meet the press, vice president, okay? Under pro, she wrote, and this is his communications director, control message. So if you go out and meet the press, it's really easy to control the message. So that's a very good outlet for us. It's in fact option number 1. Now, it's a different host at this point, to be fair to Chuck Todd, who did the interview yesterday with the former vice president. But nonetheless, it appears that it's still option number 1 for Dick Cheney. He still believes he can control that message, and we'll see that in a second. Now, Kathy Martin, who was Cheney's communications director, also said at the time, I suggested we put vice president on Meet the Press, which was a tactic we often used. It's our best format. So just to show you that you have context in terms of how they view the mighty press in America. They find it very easy to control the message there. So now let's go to that message. Chuck Todd asked them, what do you consider torture? Get a load of this.
Well, torture to me, Chuck, is an American citizen on his cell phone making a last call to his 4 young daughters shortly before he burns to death in the upper levels of the Trade Center in New York City on 9/11. There's this notion that somehow there's moral equivalence between what the terrorists did and what we do, and that's absolutely not true. We were very careful to stop short of torture. The Senate has seen fit to label their report torture, but we worked hard to stay short of that definition.
Well, what is that definition?
Definition is the one that was provided by the Office of Legal Counsel. All of the techniques that were authorized by the president were, in effect, blessed by the Justice Department opinion that we could go forward to those without, in fact, committing torture.
So let's get those 2 parts of the definition right. What is torture? If you're burned alive while you're calling your children. Okay, that is torture. Everything else, a little short of torture. Okay, well, how did you guys define torture? We defined it as whatever we liked. The Office of Legal Counsel said it wasn't torture, so by definition, it wasn't torture. Well, which branch was the Office of Legal Counsel under? Oh, my branch, the executive branch. Oh, I see. Well, isn't that convenient? And in fact, we know that Dick Cheney's office went around cherry-picking the lawyers that they wanted to make sure that they got the opinion that they wanted to justify whatever programs they wanted to run. So now more of this nonsense.
Majid Khan was then suspected of was subjected to involuntary rectal feeding and rectal hydration. It included 2 bottles of Ensure. Later in the same day, Majid Khan's lunch tray consisting of hummus, pasta, sauce, nuts, and raisins was pureed and rectally infused. Does that meet the definition of torture?
That does not meet the definition of what was used in the program.
No, I understand that, but does that meet the definition of torture in your mind?
In my mind, I've told you what meets the definition of torture. It's what 19 guys armed with airline tickets and box cutters did to 3,000 Americans on 9/11. What was done here apparently certainly was not one of the techniques that was approved. I believe it was done for medical reasons.
Well, there is no, medical community has said there is no medical reason to do this.
If you go and look, for example, at Jose Rodriguez's book, and he was the guy running the program. Right. He's got a very clear description of how, in fact, the program operated. With respect to that, I think the agency has answered it in its response to the committee report.
But you acknowledge this was over and above.
That was not something that was done as part of the interrogation program.
But you won't call it torture?
It wasn't torture in terms of it wasn't part of the program.
Whoa, so, okay, that's a really interesting last sentence. I want to read that to you again so you're clear on it. It wasn't torture in terms of it wasn't part of the program. So previously he'd said that anything that was part of the program is by definition not torture. Now he's saying anything that isn't part of the program is also by definition not torture. So unless you're 19 guys who fly planes into buildings, nothing is ever torture. Well, okay, now Dick Cheney, how do you justify that? Oh, I justify it by going to Jose Rodriguez. Wait, who's Jose Rodriguez? He's the guy who ran the torture program for the CIA. How do you like this circular reasoning? Well, the guy I charged with running the torture program later wrote a book telling me the torture program wasn't torture. Oh, I see. Well, that's very good reasoning. Well, look, you did this rectal feeding and hydration. Who are we kidding? Let's call it what it is. It's rape. It was not medically necessary in most of the instances that they did it. And even if it was medically necessary, you do it through feeding tubes. You don't do it through, as doctors have said, it's uncomfortable talking about you, but you don't do it rectally. In fact, if you do it rectally, you'll do more damage. Not only the anal fissures that some of the detainees had when they did this, and they did it on purpose, and they did it with, according to them, the largest hoses they could find, right? But in fact, if you put the food there, it causes infections. It's not for a medical purpose. It's rape. It's rape if you do it with a phallus. It's rape if you do it with a broomstick. And it's also rape when you do it with the largest hose you can find for no medical necessity whatsoever. Now, if rape isn't torture, my God, what is torture? According to Dick Cheney, if we did it, nothing at all. By definition, everything we do is A-OK. And he's not done yet. What if we tortured people who were innocent? Get a load of this.
Let me ask you, what do you say to Gul Rahman? What do you say to Suleiman Abdallah? What do you say to Khalid al-Masri? All three of these folks were detained. They had these interrogation techniques used on them. They eventually were found to be innocents. They were released, no apologies, nothing. What do we owe them?
Well,
what does it? Does this? I mean, let me go to Gul Rahman. He was chained to the wall of his cell, doused with water, froze to death in CIA custody, and it turned out it was a case of mistaken identity.
Right. But the problem I have is with all the folks that we did release that end up back on the battlefield. Of the 600 and some people who were released out of Guantanamo, 30% roughly ended up back on the battlefield. I'm more concerned with bad guys who got out and were released than I am with a few that in fact were innocent.
25% of the detainees, though, 25% turned out to be innocent. They were.
So where are you going to draw the line, Chuck? How are you going to know?
Is that too high? Is that you're okay with that margin for error?
I have no problem as long as we achieve our objective, and our objective is to get the guys who did 9/11, and it is to avoid another attack against the United States.
So wait. Let's get a couple of things clear. He says 600 were released and 30% came back into the battlefield. Dick Cheney, who released them? Oh, right, the Bush administration. He made it seem like it was somebody else that released them. No, you released them, so that's also on you, okay? So apparently you released some of the wrong guys, and you kept some of the wrong guys as well. You kept some of the innocents, and you released some of the guilty. Well played, Dick Cheney. And then he says, now remember, it worked. We got bin Laden. Ooh, who's we? You can get bin Laden. You had 7 to 8 years to get bin Laden. You never got him. And they didn't get bin Laden through the torture. In fact, we just found that out in the Senate report. We got the critical information about his courier before he was ever tortured. In fact, he was held by a foreign government when we found out that information. So everything this guy says is a lie. We kept the country safe. Dick, what are you talking about? 9/11 happened on your watch, not somebody else's watch. You know the most critical piece of intelligence we got was bin Laden determined to attack inside the United States. That was a warning that you were given and that you ignored. And then you want to talk about how you got intelligence during torture afterwards. No, you didn't. They went through 6.3 million pages of CIA documents, not Democratic documents, not Senate documents, the CIA's own documents. It didn't work. By the way, you know how we got more innocent people involved in the program? 25% of the people were tortured were innocent. He says, I don't care. I'm more concerned about the people who fought us. Well, can we not be equally concerned or also concerned? I'm concerned about the people fighting us. I'm also concerned, because I'm a decent human being, who still has a heart, if we accidentally torture and rape the wrong people, let alone the right people? And how did we get some of those people? Through the torture in the first place. The report explains that, for example, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded 183 times, so he started making up names. And he made up names of people who they then brought into Guantanamo and tortured to get information out of them, but they were perfectly innocent in the first place, and the only reason they were there is because torture doesn't lead to the correct answers, it leads to the incorrect answers. Now, did Dick Cheney not realize that? Everybody in the world assumes he didn't. Everybody thinks, well, look, this guy might be a maniac, but he did it to, quote unquote, keep us safe, and he shouldn't have done it, and it's obvious that he doesn't care at all about innocence, etc., but his job was to keep us safe, and that's what he did, right? And that's why they had to do the torture. No. You're misunderstanding it. The torture comes from the manuals that we re-engineered, reverse engineered. It actually came from communist China, and we prepared our guys for the waterboarding in case they were caught, for example, in Vietnam. That's why Senator John McCain was one of the few Republicans to say the Senate report is right. We did torture people, and we shouldn't have, because he was tortured by the North Vietnamese using a similar manual. We reverse engineered it. But a lot of people think we forgot that the whole point of that manual was not to get critical information to fight against us. It was to get false confessions. You remember what they would do? They would march out people to say, yes, the Americans are wrong, the North Vietnamese were right, and then whoever the Chinese were fighting, they would do likewise, and they would get people to admit to things that didn't actually happen. And so every report I see that makes a good point of mentioning that says, well, you know, it's funny or ironic that we forgot that. I don't think we forgot it. In fact, one of the guys that we tortured, after we did a fake execution of him, we were going to bury him alive with the help of the Egyptians, said, yeah, Iraq did 9/11. He knew that Iraq did not do 9/11. He actually was not innocent. He was one of the guys that was part of 9/11. And so later when, hey, why did you make up that Iraq did 9/11? Seemed like that's what you guys wanted to hear. And who wanted to hear that Iraq was part of 9/11? Who was desperate to invade Iraq? Oh, right, Dick Cheney. So you all think that it's abhorrent that Dick Cheney is justifying this torture when it didn't accomplish its objective. Well, the reality is, for Dick Cheney, it did accomplish its objective. So he doesn't care about the innocent people we tortured. He doesn't care about the others that we tortured. You know how many people were killed in the Iraq War? Hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians, let alone 5,000 of our guys, more than on September 11th, let alone the tens of thousands of our guys who were horribly injured. You think Dick Cheney cared about that? He says the same thing about that as he does about torture. I'd do it again in a minute. That was the whole point. For Dick Cheney, this is not an apology tour, and of course he would never apologize, or even an excuse tour. This is a mission accomplished tour. He's going on TV not to explain these things away, but to brag. That's the real Dick Cheney. Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. So what is Washington, D.C. going to do now that we know that people were tortured, including about 20 to 25% of the detainees who are innocent? We tortured innocent people, including what they're calling euphemistically rectal feeding. Now, that's the new euphemism, like enhanced interrogation was the euphemism for torture. Rectal feeding is the euphemism for anal rape, which is exactly what it is. Okay, so, well, of course, they're going to go ahead and cover for themselves. So this starts first with Dick Cheney explaining to people that it's okay, man, it worked. We got the information we needed.
The techniques that we did, in fact, use, that the president authorized, that produced results, that gave us the information we needed to be able to safeguard the nation against further attacks and to be able to track down those guilty for 9/11, did, in fact, work. Now, the Senate committee, partisan operation, no Republicans involved, no interviews of anybody involved itself.
It's all CIA documentation in here.
Chuck,
it is all CIA documentation.
If you look at it, and if you look at what the people running the agency said, and what Jose Rodriguez said, who ran the program, is a good man, that, as I said the other day, I won't use the word on your show, it may be family, it's a crock. It worked. It worked now for 13 years. We've avoided another mass casualty attack against the United States. We did capture bin Laden. We did capture an awful lot of the senior guys of al-Qaeda who were responsible for that attack on 9/11. I'd do it again in a minute.
Now, let's be clear. Dick Cheney had nothing to do with the capture of bin Laden. He had plenty of time to capture bin Laden. He didn't. Is that an accident? We don't know. And we do know that he clearly wanted to go to war with Iraq. He connected 9/11 to Iraq when there was no connection whatsoever. The fact that a boogeyman still existed somewhere in the world that caused us to want to keep fighting more wars, that wound up, if you're generous, coincidentally helping Dick Cheney's overall foreign policy objectives. But no matter how you slice it, Dick Cheney never caught bin Laden. That did not happen. And we know now through this report that, in fact, the information that we got to catch bin Laden had nothing to do with the torture. It was acquired before the torture of any of these detainees, especially the one that had the story about the courier. Okay, now, he says, well, it just generally worked anyway. We didn't have another 9/11 on our watch. Oh, congratulations, Dick. You only had one 9/11 on your watch. Okay, great. I hope you take great pride in that. Now, it's not true that there are no Republicans that support this. John McCain and Lindsey Graham support it. John McCain supports it because he was the victim of torture and knows what a heinous and immoral and terrible and counterproductive thing that it is. He says there were no interviews with the CIA agents. They went through 6 million pages of the things that CIA agents wrote. So if you had invited people like Jose Rodriguez that Dick Cheney tells you to invite, he's the guy who ran the torture program, gee, I wonder what he would have said. He would have said, oh, man, yeah, it totally worked. Yeah, it was great, man. And it wasn't torture, and it was perfectly moral. That's what he wrote in his book. Of course, he's the one who ran the program. The current director of the CIA is John Brennan. When they asked John Brennan about whether it worked, his best defense is it is unknowable. And he actually says that, like, no, you can't say it didn't work because there might be information about how it worked that we don't have. In other words, you have no proof that it worked. None. They have a mountain of evidence that it didn't work. You have no proof that it worked. Okay? All right. So, now speaking of John Brennan, Huffington Post explains that he refused to call the torture program torture. Unsurprising for a head of the CIA. Now, this is an Obama guy. Okay? Obama, who is supposed to have stopped all this, right? And now they're not doing this program, but Brennan added that he would, quote, defer to the policymakers in future times on the question of whether the CIA should ever use the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques again. In other words, there's Obama's pick to head the CIA, who currently does, saying, that's like your opinion, man, on whether you want to do torture or not. So I say we're not going to do it because Obama tells me for now we're not, right? Next president comes in, he's a Republican, he's a Democrat, he wants to do torture. Nobody ever got prosecuted. Everybody says it's not a crime. And, well, wait. Is he right about that? What's the consensus? The consensus is there will be no further investigations. Congress will not investigate any further. The Justice Department decided they were not going to open up any cases on this, and they are not reconsidering that motion. That President Obama, who said that he will not look backward, he'll only look forward, says no prosecution, no way, no how, right? Well, is it torture or is it not? Torture is clearly a crime. Everybody knows that this, in fact, was in 18 different ways torture, which is a crime. But no, this is a crime that will not be punished. Hence, John Brennan is somewhat right. He says, well, it's kind of your opinion. And the next time, if we want to do it again, we'll do it again. Because basically, this Obama administration is saying, we're going to cover your ass for you by not prosecuting. Also, they're not releasing any of the pictures involved in the torture. Some of the tapes have already been destroyed, which is clearly a crime. There's no question that that's a crime. It's destroying evidence. But as long as the CIA destroys evidence, perfectly fine. There will be no prosecutions, right? Why don't they want you to see the pictures? Well, let me skip ahead and show you the pictures that came out of Abu Ghraib. This is the one time that we showed you pictures of some of the torture that we did. Well, when you see it, there's no longer a dispute as to whether it's torture. That's why they don't want you to see it. Now, President Obama could change that in a second. He could release all the pictures. Remember, it's supposedly partisan Democrats who released this. Well, then why don't they give us the torture pictures if they want to prove their case? Because in reality, there's no partisanship here. Washington consensus is we will let them get away with this, and if we want to do it again later, we reserve that right. So that's the tip of the iceberg. So when we raped them anally through the rectal feeding, and we did all these different heinous things, when we said that we would rape their mothers, when we said we would kill their children, when we actually shot a gun that was not loaded, but the guy thought he was going to be loaded, when we put a guy in a coffin for over 200 hours, when we didn't let a guy sleep for 7 days, when we did what they call Palestinian hangings, we hung them from their arms from the ceilings. When that one of those guys died, when we have those pictures and those videos, we're not going to show it to you. Instead, we're going to cover it all up. We're going to cover it up so you never see it, okay? So you never know the actual crimes that were committed, because then we'd have to do something about it. And we're not going to. We reserve the right to do this in the future. All right, now let's go to Ron Wyden, who is among the lone voices who are saying, hey, wait. Now, maybe we should do something about this. As you can see here, Dick Cheney was breathing fire. Ron Wyden will not be doing likewise.
Do you think there should be criminal prosecutions?
The Justice Department has been clear with respect to that there are not going to be. I hope they'll review the new facts. But
you want them to change their mind?
I want them to review the new facts. And what I intend to do with my colleagues right when we come back is I intend to introduce legislation to make it clear, for example, that if torture is used in the future, there would be a basis to prosecute.
So understand Ron Wyden was one of the good guys. He's been fighting to get this report out in the public for a long time. He thinks the torture did great damage to America. But on the one side, Dick Cheney comes and we did the right things. We protected you. We were the best. Torture's no big deal. Plus, we didn't do it, even though we kind of did. Yeah, it was awesome. America #1. Ron Wyden comes and said, I hope that the Justice Department kind of renews the new facts. Now, it's hard to blame the guy because he doesn't have his president's support. Who is President Obama more likely to listen to? A progressive senator from his own party or Dick Cheney? The answer is unquestionably, you can't, the facts are in. Dick Cheney, John Brennan, who supports, we're not going to call it torture. We're not going to do anything about it. Dick Cheney says don't do anything about it. We agree. We're not going to do. Ron Wyden says we should renew the facts. We're not even going to renew the new facts that have come in. The Justice Department is not going to do a damn thing about it, right? And his legislation so that we can't do it in the future. Does the president even back that? I'm not entirely sure. It's like your opinion, man. Here's more from White.
Is Director Brennan fit to serve the CIA?
Director Brennan, particularly on Thursday, said some important things and also left out some things that were important.
Well, but I go back. Director Brennan, you're comfortable with him running the CIA?
Not at this point.
You think the president should fire him?
I want to give him the chance to end this culture of denial, to deal with the misrepresentations. If he doesn't do that, we're going to have to get somebody who will.
One side breathes fire, the other side says, maybe yes, maybe no. I want to give him a chance to review things and change things, and we'll have to see. Now, when you have those two sides, if you don't know anything about the issues and you're a normal person watching that, you go, well, that guy seems very confident that he's right. That guy doesn't seem confident at all. This is how President Obama has helped the Republicans co-opt the whole town, right? Why is Ron Wyden not breathing fire like Dick Cheney did? It's because he's afraid that he would be saying, you should fire my president's CIA director. They're the same party, Democratic Party. So when Obama largely sides with Republicans and says, there will be no consequences for the torture, okay? Then Ron Wyden has to worry, oh my God, I'm in the same party. So I'm saying the president's director should be fired. I'm going to hedge. And this is what we have. Another great gift from Obama to the Republicans. By the way, another gift he gave him was John Brennan. John Brennan, who's done the drone program, which kills innocent civilians all the time, does it almost systematically and hear me out on that. We do signature strikes where we're just bombing people holding cell phones. We have no idea if they're the right people or not. We're hoping, we're guessing. Oftentimes we hit weddings. Why? Because there was gunfire at the weddings. That's how they celebrate. Well, we heard gunfire. We dropped a bomb. We killed 20 innocent civilians. That's John Brennan. That's the guy Obama brought in. Now he's at the CIA saying torture's not really torture and we can do it later. So this is how Obama helps them. won't do this particular program, but he has given it legal grounds for it to be an opinion rather than something that is criminal. Now, who's going to step into the breach? Republicans like Peter King. And they're going to say, great, the real problem isn't the CIA and the torture that we did. The real problem is that you're criticizing.
And for anyone to be comparing what the CIA did to what ISIS does, what Al-Qaeda does, is just wrong. I think we've caused tremendous damage to U.S. reputation, but this is a self-inflicted wound with a very partisan, selective report, which I think does a terrible injustice to the men and women of the CIA. Well, it would be very helpful if people on the outside helped, if the President of the United States, if leaders in the House and the Senate came forward and gave the CIA credit for what it did. It's going to be very difficult to overcome the damage that was done by Senator Feinstein and her report. I think it's important for people like myself and people in the media to speak out and say that the CIA did an excellent job at this, and that we have to stop the self-loathing. I mean, this is, to me, the burden is on us. The burden is on people in positions of influence to stop hating ourselves and to stop hating those who we ask to do the job. And so, I feel for the men and women out there in the CIA who they're wondering if they're doing today what they're told to do, 5 years from now, what's going to happen. For instance, with President Obama, I support his drone policy. Suppose 5 or 10 years from now, a Senate report comes out and says that he's guilty of human rights violations. He's guilty of war crimes because of all the innocent people who were killed by drone attacks. What happens to us then? I mean, as Americans, we've always stood together.
See, accidentally, Peter King just told you exactly why Obama's doing what he's doing. Because what if they later say, hey, Obama, you also killed innocent people? Well, he doesn't want to be prosecuted. He doesn't want anyone in his administration to be prosecuted. Now, he has no real fear that he would be prosecuted. But could people go after people in his administration? Of course they can. We did. We killed a lot of innocent civilians when we should have known better, right? It wasn't just like, oh man, we had the really good intelligence. We were targeting that one Al-Qaeda leader. We were sure, and it turns out we made a mistake. No, we know. We're careless about it. Signal intelligence, not human intelligence. There's gunfire. There's cell phones. Let's bomb it. Could you get prosecuted for that? If we lived in a decent and just society, of course you could. So no wonder Obama doesn't want anybody to ever look backward, but only to look forward at government abuses. Is that what Obama's done in every case? No, actually, there is one case where he did look backward. That was the guy, John Kirikow, who actually reported the torture program. He was a whistleblower. In that case, we look backward and we punish severely. How dare you let the American people know what's going on? Hey, you know what? Now the Senate let the American people know what's going on. Are they going to put them in prison right next to John Kirikow, or are we going to let him out? Oh, interesting. We're not going to do anything about that, right? He's going to remain in prison, and none of the people who did the torture are going to go to prison. And Peter King, his final answer to that is, the CIA, with all that torture you heard about, they did an excellent job. There's no need for self-loathing here. We're Team America, and anything we do, by definition, is awesome. Well, that right there is definitely the Washington consensus. Okay. Now, let me go to one more. I know that I keep harping on this one issue just because it makes it so clear. It's the rectal feeding issue, right? Because people argue, oh, stress positions. They don't know. They think like, oh, what's the big deal? You stand 270 hours in a certain position. I've stood for a long time. Don Rumsfeld once said, I stand at my desk all the time. What's the big deal? A lot of people don't get it. You get it, though, when you have people sticking hoses up people's asses, right? You understand it. So, with that said, let's go to that issue. So, John Yoo is the person who wrote the legal memos that justified some of the torture. At the time, he was the Deputy Assistant U.S. Attorney General in the Office of Legal Counsel. And the memo he wrote said that only prolonged mental harm or serious physical injury, such as organ failure, violated the Geneva Convention's ban on torture. Now, this was about as broad as you could possibly get, and obviously nonsensical. We actually had a whole list of things that were torture previously. He discarded that. He didn't. In law, you're supposed to care about precedent. So we have prosecuted people for waterboarding before and called it torture. He's like, I don't need precedent. I don't need your stinking laws. From now on, the new standard for torture is organ failure, meaning if you haven't died Like your heart hasn't given out on you, your lungs haven't given out on you because we filled them full of water. If you haven't died yet, it ain't torture. If you haven't lost your mind yet, it ain't torture. Although some of them did lose their minds, and at least one person in Afghanistan did die, okay? So when they asked John Yoo, hey, how about the rectal feedings, which are clearly not medically necessary and are done to basically rape these detainees? Okay, he said, actually, quote, if these things happen as they're described in the report, they were not supposed to be done. And the people who did those are at risk legally because they were acting outside their orders. When John Yoo says you might have committed torture, oh boy. Now, if we lived in any kind of decent society, you'd be in a lot of trouble. In this society, you'll be in no trouble at all, but it is patently obvious that you did torture. He goes on to say, looking at it now, I think, of course, you can do these things cumulatively or too much that it would cross the line of the anti-torture statute. So he's saying, look, man, I told him to go all the way up to the line. I didn't say go over the line. I said do all of these different things, the coffins, the stress positions, the punching them in the face, and all these different things. But I said do it within bounds of reason. Oh, oops, they did it a little outside the bounds of reason. What could I do about it? But even he can't really defend it. But of course, the guys who ordered all this in the first place can defend it. They do defend it. Dick Cheney was on Meet the Press, and he said anything we do, by definition, Office of Legal Counsel. John, you told me I could do it. I'm not even having a conversation about the specifics because it is what it is, and none of it is ever torture. It's within the program, or as he said at the very end, even if it's outside of the program, it's by definition not torture. Team America. Okay, what we do is always right. All right, now we go to Karl Rove. Let's see what he thinks about rectal feeding.
Rectal feeding that wasn't necessary. Karl, isn't that torture by any definition?
No. First of all, let's get the rectal feedings out. There are in this report 9 references on 14 pages to rectal feeding. In 4 of those 5, it is discussed as being a result of a hunger strike by the detainee. The one that there's no reference in this report to is KSM. But
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11. These were carefully designed with an idea, with the principles in mind of our statutory obligations and international commitments. The principal tests were: do they involve severe pain or suffering, or do they involve severe and prolonged mental pain or suffering? And in each instance, these procedures were carefully designed so that they would not pass those barriers. Take, for example, waterboarding. In waterboarding, unlike World War II, where the Japanese attempted to drown people by basically pouring water in their mouths, here the feet were elevated so where there's little or no chance of any fluid getting into the lungs.
You see that? When we drowned our detainees, we did it slightly better than the Japanese. Are we not merciful? And he says, well, some of them were on hunger strike. There is consensus in the medical community that you do not solve a hunger strike through rectal feeding. There's plenty of ways to feed people through the normal way, through the mouth, right? And in fact, if you do rectal feeding, oftentimes the food will collect there and cause an infection because that's not where it's supposed to go. And the guys who did this knew that because they said they would try to find the largest hose possible to carry this out. It was obviously intended to torture these people. And by Karl Rove's own admission, half the time, they were not on a hunger strike. It was not necessary at all. They just wanted to rape the guys. Well, he says it's okay because the other guys, they did prolonged suffering. And we said, if we're going to rape you with a hose, we'll do it in short bursts. I don't know if I believe that either. But is that the best defense you can find? Apparently, yes, because as Chris Wallace alluded to, how do you say rape is not torture? But nonetheless, they're going to continue to say, now here comes Michael Hayden, who is the former head of the CIA under Bush. He's going to say likewise.
Let's first of all let's differentiate, if we can, for the sake of this conversation, between the abuses, the things that were not
the unauthorized activities,
unauthorized, such as the rectal rehydration.
No, stop.
Okay.
All right, that was a medical procedure. That was done because of detainee health, that the people responsible there for the health of these detainees saw that they were becoming dehydrated. They had limited options in which to go do this. It was intravenous with needles, which would be dangerous with a non-cooperative detainee. It was through the nasal passages.
Pureeing hummus and pine nuts and
Jake, I'm not a doctor and neither are you, but what I am told is this is one of the ways that the body is rehydrated. These were medical procedures. And to give you a sense...
You're really defending rectal rehydration.
What I'm defending is history. To give you a sense as to how this report was put together, this activity, which was done 5 times, in each time for the health of the detainee, not part of the interrogation program, not designed to soften him up for any questioning. The committee, the Democrats on the committee have used one half-ass, unwarranted comment in one email to justify the story that you have now bought hook, line, and sinker.
I'm not sure I would use the term half-ass in this regard. He says, God damn it, Jake, I'm not a doctor. I'm just the head of the CIA that authorized all of this. Maybe you should have consulted with a doctor, right? And he says that each time it was for the health of the detainee. They were just trying to help the detainees. You see that? That's actually categorically untrue. Half the time they pretended it was because of the hunger strikes. The other half time they didn't even pretend, right? And on top of that, he says, it's just a medical procedure. If you're a little dehydrated, we attach the hose to your ass. Well, Michael, have you ever been dehydrated? I mean, you're running around the block or anything like that? If you'd like, we can do that medical procedure to you. Would you have that? Let me ask any of you watching this, even if you're the most hardcore conservative in the world, would you agree to let anybody do this medical procedure to someone you love? To a family member? Think about it. Think about who they are. To a friend? To yourself? Oh yeah, I'm a little dehydrated. Can you smash up some pine nuts and hummus and find the largest hose you can find and do rectal feeding for me? You know that the answer is no, that none of you would have that done to you. You know that it's rape. You know that it's torture. But these guys are out here still trying to make it a 50-50 claim. Some people say it was torture. Some people say it wasn't. Who can decide? Who can know? The one thing that is helpful here is at least the war criminals have outed themselves. We know exactly who they are, and they're right there defending the rape and torture that they authorized. All right, now finally on this issue of the torture report, let's go to one more interesting angle on this. Now, a lot of people have been saying that President Bush, and including the Senate report, didn't know the full extent of what they had been doing at the CIA in terms of what they called the enhanced interrogation, but what every other person calls torture, because that has been its legal definition throughout history. And that he found out in 2006 when he saw that a detainee had been chained up to a wall and wearing diapers, and that he had gone to the bathroom on himself, and that he was uncomfortable with that. What's really interesting is that the guys who worked for Bush disagree. They're saying, no, the boss knew all along. The Senate intelligence report does not hold Bush accountable enough. Really? That can't be true. They didn't really say that, did they? Well, first, let's take a look at Rove here.
The report says that President Bush didn't know about these enhanced interrogation techniques until 2006. You were there. Was that true?
No. In fact, he says in his book, describes how he was briefed and intimately involved in the decision. He made the decision. He was presented, I believe, 12 techniques. He authorized the use of 10 of them, including waterboarding. This is in a footnote, and it is illustrative of the problem with this report.
The allegation that he didn't know.
Why is Rove all of a sudden, no, Bush knew. Bush definitely knew. Is he alone? Nope. Here comes Dick Cheney.
The Feinstein report suggests that President Bush was not fully briefed on the program and was deliberately kept in the dark by the CIA.
Not true. Didn't happen. Read his book. He talks about it extensively in his memoirs. He was, in fact, an integral part of the program. He had to approve it before we went forward with it. But I think that he knew everything he needed to know and wanted to know about the program, and there's no question.
I mean, did he know the details?
I think he knew certainly the techniques, that we did discuss the techniques. There's nothing, there was no effort on our part to keep him from that. He was, just as with the terrorist surveillance program. On the terrorist surveillance program, he had to personally sign off on that every 30 to 45 days. So the notion that the committee's trying to peddle it, somehow the agency was operating on a rogue basis and we weren't being told, or the president wasn't being told, is just a flat-out lie.
I mean,
So why throw President Bush under a bus? Because that's exactly where they don't want to wind up. So if someone ever charges them, if there's anybody with moral fiber in their being in Washington in leadership, which they should rest assured is not likely to happen, and they want to go after these war criminals, Rove and Cheney are right now saying, "Well, me, it was the big guy. Bush authorized it. He knew. Look at his memoirs. He knew all the techniques. Me, I don't know what you're talking about. I was just following orders. I mean, the president told me to do. What can I do?" Wait a minute, I thought you guys were all, serving the pleasure of the president, and you all want to protect him, and you're all on Team Bush, etc. All of a sudden, and you all think it's perfectly fine, but all of a sudden, here you are on TV, all of a sudden it's the time to cover your own ass. The big guy, don't ask me, ask Bush. Wasn't me. Convenient. Okay, I am massively out of time, so I will save the Koch brothers and all the other wonderful stories we have for you for tomorrow. It turns out the Koch brothers are misunderstood. I'll tell you about that tomorrow. Anna is next with the Cleveland cops crying about how people complained when they shot and killed the wrong people. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you. Today is one of the most hectic days we've had at the studio, so our timing's a little off. And my timing's so off that I didn't get a chance to read your tweets, which I will do later. I do want to mention one thing before we go on, and we have some updates on Sydney for you in some interesting ways. We're doing a special going forward from today to the end of the year. There's a bunch of specials we're doing, but the one that I want to tell people is that you can sign up for membership special rate just for these next couple of weeks, where it's just $1 for membership. Normally it'd be $10, but it's $1 this over the next couple of weeks for the first month of membership. Okay, so go to tytnetwork.com/subscribe to find out all about it and find out all different ways that you can be a TYT member. Okay, Casper. Without further ado, since there has been a lot of ado, what do you got?
All right. Muslims living in Australia have feared for their safety after the hostage situation that took place in Sydney. And as a result, non-Muslims have come together in order to protect those who feel unsafe in public transportation. Now, this all started when a woman by the name of Rachel Jacobs noticed that there was a woman on a train who was slowly taking off her hijab and trying to conceal the fact that she was Muslim. And of course she was doing that because she was worried that there would be violence targeted toward her because of the hostage situation. Well, after she had written about it, a woman by the name of Tessa Kum noticed it, and she started a Twitter hashtag to protect Muslims. So first she wrote the following: "If you regularly take the 373 bus between Kogi and Martin Place, wear religious attire and don't feel safe alone, I'll ride with you, tweet me for the schedule," right? After she tweeted that, all of a sudden the hashtag I'll ride with you went viral.
Yeah,
and a bunch of Australians got together and they said, you know what, here's my schedule on public transportation. I want to help out as well. I will protect you. And it was just a really great, humanitarian effort in a way, because all of a sudden you have people getting together and protecting one another from irrational hatred.
So I love this happening in Australia, and I wish that we had similar reactions in the U.S., and it's a great credit to the Australian people who instantly put this together organically, right? Because this guy's a lone nut. There's a ton of lone nuts here in America. They do things for different reasons in their own crazy heads. Right-wingers, Muslim fundamentalists, the guy who shot all the people, women, and the people who support women or who have sex with women. Like all these, whatever their stupid, crazy ideology is. This guy's not connected to ISIS or Al-Qaeda or anyone else. He's a guy who's been going around Australia leading his own protests by himself. He's a self-styled sheikh.
Yep.
And so blaming other Muslims that live in Australia for it is insane.
Yeah,
right?
and we did see, an uptick in violence targeted toward Muslims after 9/11. People who weren't even Muslim but happened to somehow look Muslim or were stereotyped as Muslim were being attacked as well. Cab drivers in New York, for instance. I mean, again, it's just irrational hatred, irrational fear, a lot of fear mongering. And to know that this kind of effort took place in another country is kind of inspiring. And you're right. I wish that that kind of behavior existed here in the U.S. as well.
You know, a lot of people then rebel and say, no, you guys are being ridiculous. It's not irrational at all, man. It's Muslims. It's always Muslims. Now, in America, we know for a fact, due to the reporting, that terrorism is done more by right-wing terrorists than it is by Muslim terrorists. That's true after 9/11. That was true before 9/11. Now, obviously, the scale of 9/11 was devastating. We get that. By the way, the scale of Oklahoma City was also devastating, and that was also a right-winger, right? So, but when the right-wingers do it, nobody's like, let's go attack all the right-wingers and strike back at them. But a lot of people do have the reaction when it's a Muslim, let's go hit all of the Muslims.
I mean, my favorite story of all time that we covered on the Young Turks was about how the Defense Department actually stopped focusing on right-wing extremism because the right wing fought back. They had a department that was dedicated to fighting right-wing extremism in the country. And then since the right wing was upset about that, they're like, all right, fine, we'll cut down the department to one person.
It used to be 25 people tracking that because you need a lot of people, obviously, because this is a huge problem in America. Yeah. They brought it down to one person. The guy who ran it, he said, I'm a Republican. What are we doing? Why are we allowing these extremists to go on track? That's going to lead to trouble. And by the way, it has. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm inspired by the Australians. I have an idea that I just thought of as we were talking. Next time a right-winger attacks and kills someone, in America it happens way too often because everybody's got guns, right? I'll ride with you, right-wingers. So, you know what, just to make sure you're safe, I'll take a conservative to work, okay? Well, I don't know what they would do here, but okay, I'll take you to your work. So, now, doesn't that seem absurd? Of course nobody's going to lash out at all right-wingers.
Yeah.
So why do they do it when it comes to Muslims?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the way the media covers these types of events, right? Starting with 9/11 and then any other situation after 9/11, right? They're painted as extremists. You have Fox News basically fear-mongering about them. That kind of stuff seeps into, you know, the public consciousness, and as a result, people act that way.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So there's some good news, I guess, out of this whole terrible situation. But Uber has found itself in the middle of controversy as a result of the hostage situation. I'll tell you the details on that. So Uber has an automated system where all of a sudden you'll see a price surge when there is a high demand for Uber drivers, right? And Uber says that the reason why they do this is because they want to incentivize drivers to go out there, log online, and go give people rides. Well, during the hostage crisis in Sydney, Australia, all of a sudden there was a huge price surge. So I'll give you the details. The company's minimum fare out of Martin Place hit $100, 4 times the normal $25 minimum. So people noticed this and they're like, what the hell? Uber's taking advantage of this terrible situation. How could they possibly do that? Within 30 minutes, Uber not only got rid of the price surge, they decided to give free rides to anyone that was in that area.
So now there are defenders of this plan, including some people who work here. They're saying, as Uber says, surge pricing, this is their official statement on it, is used to encourage more drivers to come online and pick up passengers from the area. So normally people would be scared. I don't want to go towards the hostage situation, but if I'm getting $100, then maybe I'll take the risk. And they're saying that's why they did it. Yeah, I'm 50-50 on that.
Yeah, okay, so Uber is kind of twisting their reasoning for why they do the price surge. I don't believe that they do the price surge because they want to incentivize the drivers. Maybe there's a small part of it that makes them want to do that. But I think the majority of the reason why they do it is because they know that people are desperate, they're out partying, they're drunk, and this is in the majority of cases, right? And they need a ride. And what are you going to do if there's high demand? You're going to increase the price. High demand, higher price. People are desperate. They need a ride. That's the way it works.
So my sense of how it went down here, based on the reporting, is that they did it instinctively. Mm-hmm. Because that's what they always do. Supply and demand.
I think it is an automatic system.
Right. That's what I mean by instinctively. This is what they do. As Anna was saying, if there's higher demand, they raise the prices. So that's what they did, right? And then afterwards, they were like, well, we do that so that more people will show up and pick you up. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket.
It's great framing.
It is. Congratulations to them for finding a very good Well, you can say excuse, or you can find, say, a reason to have done it. Now, look, they now, as a PR move, have decided that they're going to refund everybody's money. Good, I'm glad they did that, and that is smart of them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think that Uber has a responsibility to provide free transportation to anybody who's involved in any emergency situation. So let's not get carried away in the opposite direction either.
If there wasn't a price surge to begin with, there's no way Uber would have done that. This is all a way of fixing their image. It's a PR move. It's a smart move, right? But I don't think that they would have done this if they weren't in the middle of some controversy tied to the hostage situation.
No question.
Yeah. All right. The union representing the Cleveland Police Department is outraged at some of the protests that NFL players are doing in regard to the shooting of Tamir Rice. Now, the Cleveland Browns wide receiver Andrew Hawkins recently wore a shirt kind of protesting some of the police actions against individuals like Tamir Rice and John Crawford. And it turns out that the Police Patrolman Union President, Jeff Falmer, was not amused by this. In fact, he released a statement saying the following: "It's pretty pathetic when athletes think they know the law. They should stick to what they know best on the field. The Cleveland Police protect and serve the Browns Stadium, and the Browns organization owes us an apology."
And then he added, okay, look, I kid around a little bit, and I did in the same St. Louis situation when the cops cried about the Rams players coming up with their hands up, right? But it actually really pisses me off. Tamir Rice is a 12-year-old. He had a toy gun. They shot him dead in 2 seconds flat, literally. John Crawford, also BB gun, not a real gun, and they shot him dead.
And just keep in mind that both incidents occurred in Ohio, where they have open carry laws.
Right.
So apparently,
even if they were real guns, wouldn't conservatives say right to carry, right? So they're just exercising their Second Amendment rights. But they weren't even real guns, right? And they shot both of them with incredibly, I think John Crawford was around 15 seconds of their arrival, and Tamir Rice was in 2 seconds, okay? And Crawford's not that old, he's 22 as well, right? So they didn't investigate, they just shot. Are some people right to be concerned that perhaps the framing of it being African Americans led them to shoot quicker? Would they have shot just as quick in the richest white neighborhood of Cleveland? I think that is at the minimum a fair question, right? But how dare you ask that question? How dare you wear a shirt that the Cleveland police are not in favor of? I guess they're lucky that the cops didn't shoot him. They found his shirt threatening. You never know what Cleveland cops can do.
No, but the incredible thing about this is, in case after case, the police have won, right? With the St. Louis Police Department criticizing the St. Louis Rams for doing their hands up, don't shoot protest. You already won. You guys literally got away with murder, right? Let it go. If people are going to protest, let it go. If you want all this controversy to go away, let it go. Don't have your police union send out a whiny press release or statement saying that they're truly offended by the acts of protest. We live in America. People are allowed to have acts of protest. Stop being whiny and move on with your life, especially if you want the situation to go away. This is just making them look even worse.
And look at the implicit threat there, too. We know we guard your stadium. Do you want to be guarded? I mean, maybe we won't protect you anymore. Dude, you don't protect us anyway. You shot a 12-year-old dead in 2 seconds. And so, yeah, I get the protest about that because, as Anna points out, it's a country called America. That's the most fundamental right that we have. And now you'd like the right to be able to kill that kid and then have no one complain about it, right? How dare you? The reason they're mad at football players is because football players are popular. They have some degree of power.
Right.
And they can't have that, right? And it doesn't allow them to frame all African Americans as looters and rioters, et cetera. Now, here's a guy that a lot of people like because he's an athlete in Cleveland, right? So people might find him sympathetic. They can't have that. Everybody bow their heads. If we shoot your kids dead, know your role and accept your place. So these cops are the worst. And no, I don't have any respect for you. I don't care about your threats. And so it's one thing to make one mistake and say, we're so sorry. I can't believe that happened to a citizen and to a kid holding a toy gun. It's another thing to say, oh, no, you owe us an apology. You owe us an apology, right? Now, remember, this same Ohio cops, in general, were the ones that shot hundreds of times and killed those two people who were also unarmed, not even the Crawford or the Rice case, and then said, oh, you treated the white cops a little different than you treated the black cops when we murdered those two people, okay? And so they sued. They sued to say, you had us on leave for 3 days. That was too much punishment for us after we put 20 bullets apiece on those two passengers in the car, killed them dead when they were also unarmed.
I know, it's incredible. And I think the part of this that's the most disheartening is just the lack of remorse, right? The lack of compassion, the lack of empathy for someone who was a 12-year-old who was unarmed and lost his life, right? Now, you can make arguments about, oh, well, it was a toy gun, but it looked like a real gun. No. Look at the video. 2 seconds flat. There was no question asked before he shot at that 12-year-old. There was nothing. Like, he just went for it. And there's no remorse. And it's amazing because there are people that defend the cops regardless of who they shoot, how they shoot them, and how, I don't know, how blatantly, I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah,
it's
look,
it's depressing. It's depressing. These stories literally depress me.
The word I keep wanting to use is in their statement. They said that Andrew Hawkins' protest was pathetic. No, you're pathetic, right? When you shoot these people and then you complain that other people said, hey, wait, maybe you shouldn't have shot a 12-year-old, right? So, but I want to do something that's some people might find more of a stretch, but let me make a case for it. I'm going to connect the Cleveland cops' reaction here to Dick Cheney's reaction about torture. Mm-hmm. You know why? It's the same culture of the people in authority are always right. They are by definition right. And how dare you complain? Peter King, congressman from New York, said, look, you ought to be celebrating the CIA. What is this? All this self-loathing. No. We don't question what we did. It doesn't matter what we did. It doesn't torture, rape, and killing of our own citizens. It doesn't matter what we did. You never question authority, right? And Dick Cheney said, if we did it, well, then it must not have been torture. Okay, so, okay. And these cops say, if we did it, it must have been right. And that's what every goddamn grand jury says. If cops did it, it must have been right. There's never going to be any consequences. And both sides give the same image out and the same message out. Don't you dare question us.
Yeah.
Okay? We are above the law. We get to break the law anytime we want because we are in power. And you will know your role and you will bow your head.
Now, I do want to give some credit to the coach for the Browns and also the NFL because neither organization has come forward and said, you know what, we're going to censor our players. In fact, the Browns released a statement saying the following: we have great respect for the Cleveland Police Department and the work that they do to protect and serve our city. We also respect our players' rights to project their support, and bring awareness to the issues that are important to them if done so in a responsible manner. So basically they're saying, look, it's their First Amendment right. We're not going to shut them down. We're not going to shut them up. If they want to protest, let them do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, credit to NFL. I mean, they could have been stupid here, and they weren't. They did the right thing, and they're largely backing their players, and they're not issuing any apologies.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, more stories, including a 17-year-old who allegedly made $75 million selling stocks.
All right, back on the Young Turks. All right, I have had time now to read some of your tweets. I'm going to read those to you guys in a second. I interviewed Chris Novoselic, the bass player for Nirvana, this morning.
Not a big deal.
Not a big deal at all. So part of the reason I tell you that, or the whole reason I tell you that is, well, part, because you should also watch it on TYT Interviews. It's not up yet, but it will be soon. Main reason I tell you is because it's cool. He also watches Young Turks.
Shut up!
So, I mean, you know, everybody watches whatever they watch, right? So he watches some of the interviews, right? And, you know, he was referencing when I was talking to him off air about, you know, TYT this and TYT that. And I was like, that's so fucking cool, man. And so he cares a lot about politics and he's involved in that and getting people the right to vote and stuff like that. So anyway, it's neat. And I thought you guys would like knowing that. All right, now, I was a little self-conscious about how we were late on the live stream and a lot of stuff. So it was nice to hear John Connor write in. Have to say that the first hour was among the best I've seen in a long while. Kudos to all the young Turks and Cenk. So thank you, John. That makes me feel better. I appreciate it. And JR put a ton of hard work into getting those clips ready and so that we could present them the right way. Then Cassandra Grzankowsk. Cassandra, you know your name is impossible to pronounce, so just live with it. Okay, as do I.
It's your fault, okay?
Yes, okay, that's right. I'm now like the people in authority. It's your fault, okay? You had it coming in. If you complain, I will be greatly offended. He says, I'm a cancer doctor who deals with bowel obstructions all the time.
Okay, what are bowel instructions?
I will now instruct your bowel. No, that's from a German movie I saw. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm a cancer doctor who deals with bowel obstructions all the time, have never and will never consider rectal feedings. So it's obviously bullshit.
Yeah, of course.
It's obvious. Okay. And then John Graziano makes it a little simpler. Says, do you really need to go to medical school to figure out that people can't eat through their ass? So, John, well played. I like that. In fact, I'm going to quote John again in a second. Yeah, right now, in fact. Let's go skip ahead. Why do poor people, on a different issue, why do poor people commit most crimes? Crimes by rich people aren't called crimes.
Yeah, so true.
God, that nails it when it comes to Cleveland.
That's one of the biggest crimes in America, though.
Yeah.
You know, with our financial system and everything.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Wall Street, when it comes to torture, when it comes to the cops, when they commit the crimes, they aren't crimes by definition. So that you goddamn poor people, you're the ones committing all the crimes because we're the ones punishing you, right? And he had hashtag Darth Cheney for that. And finally, let's get it a little lighter by going to Bitchy Gay Guy. He says, Dick Cheney is so vile, he might turn me away from dicks forever. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. That is Bitchy Gay Guy at his best right there. All right, let's move forward.
Can I just mention one other thing that's totally unrelated to tweets? The first day that the two of us show up with haircuts together.
Oh.
Special.
Not really. Okay,
Anyway.
number one, I did not notice. Sorry. I'm normally good at that, though. I'm usually like, I'm quick to notice and to compliment, but I missed it today.
Well, your dick, and I noticed your haircut.
Yes. Okay, but you did. Yes.
I noticed your haircut, and when I was in the other room getting ready for the second hour, I told everyone around me, Cenk looks good. His haircut makes him look younger.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. But now that I've noticed it, lovely.
Okay.
Lovely. Okay.
Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, well, can I go back to Blue Steel for a second?
What?
Okay, it's a reference to Zoolander. Okay, yes. Okay, we move forward.
Page Six managed to shortly or briefly interview Bill Cosby, and during the interview, Bill Cosby had some interesting things to say about the media and his wife. So let me give you his exact statements. According to Page Six, he said, I only expect the black media to uphold the standards of excellence in journalism, and when you do that, you have to go in with a neutral mind.
Well, I would argue actually at this point that people have been very neutral to Cosby. Meaning that if you were to take the weight of the evidence, there would be one side that was predominant, okay? And I don't see a lot of the people in the official media saying he's guilty.
Yeah.
I don't see that, right? I think they go out of their way to give him the benefit of the doubt and say this is what people claim, but he's never been convicted of anything, et cetera. So I don't know what he's complaining about in that sense. Second of all, he's talking about the black media?
Yeah, let's discuss that for a second. I thought that was the interesting part. Like, I expect the black media to be neutral. Like, I'm a black guy, so you should look out for your fellow black people, right? Even though I've thrown black people under the bus several times in the past.
And even though I might have raped black people.
I mean...
Beverly Johnson's black, some of the accused are black, so I don't know that you get to make that claim, right? But you're right, Anna, the most relevant hypocrisy here is the guy who's been lecturing the black community all these years. Now, all of a sudden, he needs their help. He needs their backup. And he goes, remember, everybody, I'm black. I'm black. Remember that, right? It reminds me of Clarence Thomas. And it's a weird thing that I feel bad comparing Bill Cosby to Clarence Thomas. I don't know which way I should feel bad about that. Anyway, but Clarence Thomas, affirmative action is not needed. I mean, I took advantage of it, but I like to burn the bridge after me. And it would be one thing if Clarence Thomas said, hey, listen, it was needed, but I'm worried that it's counterproductive. That's a claim I make, right? I understand that claim, but he doesn't say that. He just, this is affirmative action entirely. I don't need it. I'm so good. I would have made it anyway. I'm great, yeah. And you're not going to get it, even though I got the advantage of it. And then when he got in trouble, high-tech lynching.
Yeah.
During his Supreme Court hearings, he said, this is a high-tech lynching of me. Oh, all of a sudden, you're black. Okay, that's interesting. So now I would like to turn to our black media, J.R. Jackson. Okay. Now, J.R., you and I have been discussing this for about 10 years, Bill Cosby and his requests of the African-American community. With that in mind, will you honor his request to keep a neutral mind in terms of Bill Cosby?
Well, consider the way he put it. I mean, you notice he did this also when he was talking to the AP reporter, when he's buttering up in a way. So he said, you know, you could be seen as a reputable member of the media if you cut that part out of what I just said. Remember that whole interview?
Do it for
I don't know if you were here for that.
Integrity. He kept saying integrity.
You have some media integrity. You can be seen as the right kind of media person, as a reporter, if you do that the way I want. Now, it's upholding the standards of excellence only if the black media does it my way. But again, when he's talking down to black folks, they're saying, you know, we talked about the airing the dirty laundry talk from years ago. Then it's, you guys don't know, you know, you're not living right. Why don't you do this? Pull your pants up, do this that way. When it's all disconnected with what's actually happening to the community. But now there's an excellence to this community as long as they're doing something for you.
Yeah.
When they're not doing it for you, when you're talking down to people, get up. What the fuck is wrong with you? It's a sneaky trick. And it doesn't work. Everybody can see what you are now, you know. So I have not much to say about this guy.
Yeah.
You know, JR has been restrained throughout this whole thing. Let me just be honest with you. He doesn't like Bill Cosby. Okay, never has. In fact, 10 years ago, we used to get into debates, and I'd say, well, look, man, he's trying to help in his own way, and he would say, not buying it. I want to give credit to JR's excellence in restraint. That he's not doing a victory lap right now.
He's got a lot of integrity.
I thought the entire time that he was doing the Cosby story, he'd be doing this. Okay, but he is not. Credit to your excellence, Jan.
Okay, so there is a little more from the interview. Now, Bill Cosby wouldn't specifically comment on the rape allegations. Remember that more than 24 women have come forward with very similar stories of sexual assault and rape, okay? But he did want to talk about his wife a little bit and the support that his wife has had toward him throughout all of these allegations. He said the following: love and strength of womanhood. Let me say it again. Love and the strength of womanhood. And you could reverse it, the strength of womanhood and love.
Yeah, there's some chance he's lost his mind.
I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah. No, you can reverse it. Well, I mean, in some bizarre way, he has reversed it. Because what he did was he attacked womanhood. That's the whole thing here. All the allegations, right? I mean, dozens that we know of, right, that he has been charged with. So now, all of a sudden, he's the champion of womanhood. Same thing he's doing with the black community. As JR is saying, talking down to them, all of a sudden, he wants to talk about their excellence in journalism to make sure they protect him, right? And with womanhood, he's been in so many ways attacking it, literally, you know, as literal as it gets. And now all of a sudden, he's the defender of the strength of womanhood and love, and the reverse.
I mean, it's such a serious story. I feel like a clown laughing about it, but it's such a clownish statement, especially given the allegations that we've been reporting on for weeks now.
Okay, hear me now, quote me later. There's some chance that Bill Cosby at some point does a Donald Sterling defense. When he was on one of the late night shows, he seemed incoherent before any of this broke, okay? He seemed incoherent to me. I didn't understand what the hell he was talking about. I was like, is this some sort of shtick that I'm not understanding? Like, is it my problem that I'm not understanding? This doesn't make any sense either. That the Donald Sterling defense is, oh, I lost my mind a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And so he might come out and be like, oh, take pity on me, man. I don't know what I'm talking about. So that might be coming one day.
Yeah. All right, more police brutality stories for you guys. Lots of fun. A 23-year-old cop in Victoria, Texas, by the name of Nathaniel Robinson, was caught on dash cam footage using a stun gun against a 76-year-old man by the name of Pete Vasquez. Now, apparently, there was some sort of issue with the stickers on his plates, and the 23-year-old cop wanted to pull him over. And little did he know that Vasquez's plates were totally fine. The stickers were totally fine. In fact, he was driving a car that had stickers that made any type of violation exempt, any type of sticker violation exempt. But the cop didn't know that because apparently the cop doesn't know the law. Anyway, nonetheless, a violent altercation ensues. Take a look at the video. It's a little difficult to watch, especially when you consider the age of the man who's being attacked by the cop. Take a look at it and we'll discuss.
70 class?
30 class, send me another unit. 2751. Step it up. 1517, I'm in row.
Motion cross street to depot. Centigrade is 23.
Okay.
If you have time to readjust your sunglasses, you're not in real danger.
Why are you using a stun gun on a 76-year-old over freaking tags and stickers? Okay, again, Victoria Advocate newspaper said that the dealer tags on the car make it exempt from inspection, okay? The cop should have known the law, first of all. And even if the cop didn't know the law, let's say the guy was doing something wrong with his stickers. Really? You're gonna pull out a stun gun and use it twice? According to reports, police told the newspaper that Robinson used the device twice on Vasquez. Okay.
See, the real crime isn't the sticker violation. You don't care about the stickers. Nobody cares about the stickers, right? Oh, you've done sticker crime? I mean, really? No. The real violation was he disrespected the police officer by not following his orders immediately. So when he says, hey, I got a problem with your stickers, you can't be telling him, no, they're actually legal and I can explain why. No, you have to immediately put your hands behind your back and say, yes, sir, how would you like to take me in, sir? What terrible thing would you like to do to me, sir? Absolutely, sir. Yes. No, you can't disrespect him by trying to have a conversation with him. And saying, hey, wait, I have a legal right to this, is the worst thing you could possibly say to a cop. I have the legal right to this. They say, okay, well, great. Now you've opened yourself up to me kicking the living crap out of you. And that's if you're lucky and I'm not shooting.
So the cop is on administrative leave pending an investigation, and it seems like the police chief is very apologetic, which is rare in cases like this. The police chief has apologized to Vasquez. There was a store owner that you see in the video coming out of the store, and he spoke to the press as well. I told the officer, what in the hell are you doing? This gentleman is 76 years old. The cop told me to stand back, but I didn't shut up. I told him he was a goddamn Nazi stormtrooper.
Good for Larry. Okay. Go get him, Larry. Surprised he didn't get stunned either. Well, he might be white. I don't know. Okay. No, look, and I bring that up. It comes up every once in a while. Part of the issue is authority versus non-authority. People who have power versus people who don't have power. Sometimes it's race, and sometimes it's income. So, for example, in that case, Larry's the store owner. I don't know what his race is, and I'm not sure that it's relevant to this story, putting the kidding aside. But he's a store owner. You don't tase a store owner. He's a man who has some degree of power, and you should respect that, right? He's one of the citizens you'd want to protect. Now, if I say this all the time because you know it's true, and it frames it for you. If Mr. Vasquez is 76 years old and in Beverly Hills, you know, I saw Ben Stein, you know, win Ben Stein's money, that prick, okay, walking around in a pink robe in Beverly Hills, okay? Because he owns the place. He does. He has a house there. He's walking around in his yard with it, right? Imagine the cops come and kick the shit out of him.
No.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen under any circumstance.
I think socioeconomic status has more to do with it than anything else. I mean, race plays a role as well, but socioeconomic status and race are both very closely tied to one another. And so, yeah, if you're living in a wealthy neighborhood and you're doing something questionable, cops are going to look the other way a lot of times, right? Because they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. That's what it always comes down to, benefit of the doubt. Just remember that phrase because it applies to a lot of people from higher socioeconomic statuses and people that have a certain color, skin color.
A dude has a sticker violation on his Bentley in Beverly Hills and he's a 76-year-old white guy. They are not tasing him, and you know it. Everybody in the world knows it. Mr. Vasquez, his car's not that great, and he doesn't seem to have much power. Taste first, ask questions later.
I mean, these cops must get some sort of high from using these weapons, right? I mean, he used a stun gun twice on a 76-year-old. I can't get past that.
Yeah. No, he dared to resist them. That's the biggest crime in the world.
It's amazing. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Can we just cover something fun? Like,
Please, don't we have any porn stories today, for Christ's sake?
Let me see.
I like that you're actually looking.
I mean, it's the second hour. It's the second hour. Okay, I'm moving forward to the pilot story. You got it, Jesus?
Oh, pilot. See, there we go. There's sex.
We'll save
That's
the
fun.
other depressing story for tomorrow. How about that? All right. A Mexican charter pilot has been fired after he allowed 2 starlets to enter his cockpit and also take control of the plane, basically, as it was in midair. Now, the Mexican singers that I'm referring to are Esmeralda Ugalde, she's a 23-year-old, and also her actress friend, Samadhi Zandejas.
God bless.
Anyway, so they posted.
Zandejas.
They're so freaking young.
Okay. Oh, they are. Okay. Yeah. I mean, whatever.
Anyway, so they take these pictures, and of course, like most millennials do, they post them on social media immediately.
Of course.
Now, the airline saw
Was
this.
it hashtag grabbing a cockpit?
Ay, ay, ay. It looks like it. So anyway, they post this, and of course, the airline or the company that runs this charter plane realizes that there are non-pilots operating this airplane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they freak out. And so they actually track down who the pilot was by looking at the hat, which is amazing, and then they fire him.
Okay. Don't they have records of who's flying the planes? There's another way to track them down.
Yeah.
But anyway, wow, they came down hard on him.
Yeah, so this is Magna Charters, and they did, and I'm glad that they did, because, all right, I just want to have a more general discussion about how testosterone makes people do stupid things. And
No, I've never seen that.
No, but it's amazing. It's amazing. How, I'm going to try to be respectful No, I'm not going to be respectful. How fucking stupid are you to be a pilot that puts other people's lives in jeopardy by having these morons control the plane? Are you stupid? Are you really a pilot?
Yeah.
You're an idiot, and I'm glad you got fired.
So I don't know that he put their lives in danger, because I don't believe the pilots actually fly the planes.
Because you're a pilot, you would know.
Damn it, Jim, I'm not a pilot, but I pretend to know about them in my talk
Here's
show.
the thing, when I'm in a plane, I don't want a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old operating the plane. How about that?
Of course. But I believe they put it on autopilot, and none of that stuff really matters. Okay, but putting that aside, even if it was just appearance, you can't let them grab the cockpit. Okay, that's crazy. They can't commandeer your cockpit, even though you really, really want them to.
Right.
Okay. And so now, let's do my favorite thing in the world, role reversal, right? They are not 23 and 19-year-old starlets who happen to be fairly attractive, right? Or so I'm told. But they are 45-year-old Muslim men.
Oh my God.
Okay.
They wouldn't even be allowed on that charter plane.
Yeah. They're like, we would like to grab your cockpit. We would like to come in and fly the plane for a little while. Okay, I don't know where they just went. I don't know what that accent was. Okay. And the pilots are like, oh, come on in. Grab it. Do whatever you want with it. The cockpit is yours. Right? No, so is it the testosterone that's making them do stupid things? Of course!
So I got into a debate with Amir Nakui, executive producer of Pop Sugar here at TYT Network, about whether or not it's solely men that do stupid things when it comes to their sex hormones, right? But no, women do stupid things too. Not to the same extent, right? I think women are a little more reasonable when it comes to these types of things. But some women do really dumb things for a hot guy. I
hear you. It's just different. Like the women who do stupid things for guys, it gets to be a depressing conversation, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, oh no, he really loves me. Like, like really bad, right? Guys, they're just dumbasses, right? They're like, we did the famous experiment here on the Young Turks. I told Anna when she first started working here, I said, go ask any guy at a mall to buy you shoes and they will. She's like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Of course, that's not going to happen. She goes to the mall, asks a guy to buy her shoes. He buys her shoes. Why were you like, huh, what, huh? You're paying attention to me? Yeah, sure. What do you need? You need shoes? You need my airplane? What do you need? Of course.
To be fair, now that I think back at that experiment, there was flirtation going on prior to the shoe buying, right?
You think there wasn't flirtation going on before they went into the cockpit?
Probably.
Of course. That's the main weapon you have.
Yeah.
You could use it as a tool or as a weapon. And that's why these guys had to be relieved of command.
Yeah.
Because obviously it is possible that they could have been up to no good. And so it's not the right way to go. You shouldn't let anyone else drive your plane.
And also, I just love the oversharing on social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have someone in their 20s and maybe 30s controlling your plane, just know that it's going to end up on social media. They're going to post that immediately.
Of course.
And if they're starlets, a lot of people are going to notice it.
I'm enjoying the word starlet. I like that they brought that back. That hasn't been used in a while. And then I'm also enjoying that someone named Esmeralda is in the story. Like when Esmeralda says, "Can I control your vehicle?" You go, because in the cartoons, isn't Esmeralda always the bad one?
I don't know which cartoons you're speaking of.
Okay. I feel like it's always like, here's Esmeralda. No?
I feel like you're stereotyping Esmeraldas out there.
Okay, all right. So my bad, Esmeralda. Much love.
All right.
And don't think I wouldn't make the same mistake as the pilot.
All right.
Could you imagine they walk in, they're like, "I'd like to do your talk show for a while." Yeah, all right, fuck it, come on.
I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, moving on. All right. South Dakota had a genius plan, a genius PSA to basically inform people that it's a bad idea to jerk and drive. Don't want to give too much away. Take a look at the video.
Oh, boy.
Hello and welcome to Driving Proper. Today's lesson, staying the course. Winter driving can be treacherous. Should your tyre leave a snowy or icy road, resist the urge to jerk the steering wheel. Overcorrecting only results in chaos. Besides, nobody likes a jerker. Instead, stay the course. Slowly let off the gas and re-enter only after regaining control. Now that's proper driving. Discover more winter driving tips at don'tjerkanddrive.com.
That was awesome. Okay. No one pays attention to PSAs. No one cares. They ignored them immediately. I paid attention to that PSA and I learned something, right? I always overreact. I definitely jerk and drive. There's no question.
I have 2 jerk and drive stories in my life.
Okay.
Would you like to hear them?
I do, but before you share your jerk and drive stories, let me tell you the outcome of this PSA. So people in South Dakota were deeply offended by the innuendo that was portrayed in that video. And as a result, the South Dakota Office of Highway Safety has pulled the ad. In fact, they released a statement saying, "I decided to pull the ad. This is an important safety message, and I don't want this innuendo to distract from our goal to save lives on the road."
What do you just pulled the best don't pull the jerk message. You just pulled the best PSA you've ever done or anybody's ever done here. Because as Anna said, people are 1,000 times more likely to watch that. Yeah. And when they do, they go, "Oh, right, I shouldn't overcompensate. I wish I had watched that before I jerk and drove." Okay, so that leads to story number 1. I'm just got my license. I've been driving for a couple of months. I'm on my way to the SATs, hence I'm in a panic. I've got that not regular sweat, but as Ben describes, Turkish sweat going on, right? And it's a slick road that day. It wasn't snowing, but it was raining. And my car peeled out a little bit coming out of a stop sign. So I obviously wasn't going very fast. I had just come from a stop. But then I overcompensated because I hadn't seen this PSA. And I'm like, and I'm jerking and I'm driving, I'm jerking. And
that hand motion is not okay. It's not okay.
Okay, so what happened was I went into the woods. There was woods on the other side of the road. And then I overcompensated and hit a tree on the other side of the road. And then I'm in somebody's yard. And then I'm jerking in the other direction. Okay.
Oh my God.
And I wind up in the woods again. So, I mean, it was a disaster. Trust me, do not jerk and drive. And it's funny, I should have known that because that leads to the second story. Just a couple of months ago when I was getting my license, my mom and I are driving on the way to the exam when we see a guy going super slow. And we're like, what in the world is going on with this guy? And so as I go to pass him carefully, I look inside his car and then I sped up. Because I didn't want my mom to see what real jerking and driving looks like.
He was jerking off?
Yes.
Wow.
And then later, we saw him speed past us.
Oh.
And I didn't look at his windshield. But my favorite part of the story was when Anna went, oh.
That's terrible.
All right, bring back the PSA.
Yeah, it was a great PSA. I liked it. All right, do we do more?
I don't know. We started pretty late. Let's do one more, and then I'll thank some members, and we'll call it a day.
All right, I want to do this millionaire story because it's awesome. A 17-year-old made, allegedly, $72 million by trading stock during his lunch breaks in high school. This is a 17-year-old named Mohammed Islam, which is a really unfortunate name when you're living in the United States. Yeah, he was just trading stocks that involved oil, and he made a fortune as a result. New York Magazine interviewed him, and apparently he's shy. He's not really like an outgoing extrovert, but he is tremendously wealthy because he's also very smart.
Good for him. As soon as you said Mohammed Islam, I thought for sure the story was going to end in disaster. Like, oh, they arrested him, but then they realized there's nothing wrong with the guy. Like, because we have this panic in America, right?
Right.
But it's a heartwarming story about a Muslim in America.
I know, it's rare.
He lived the American dream. Even Republicans can get behind him. They're like, Mohammed Islam, oh, he made a lot of money. Ooh, on the stock market, we like this guy.
Yeah, they do. So New York Magazine, this is according to Gawker, New York Magazine confirmed that Islam's net worth is in the high 8 figures. The teen made his money trading in oil and gold, but he won't stop there. Though his parents won't let him move into his rented Manhattan apartment, and he can't drive his newly purchased BMW, no driver's license just yet, Islam and his team of 3 teen Wall Street JV investors plan on starting a hedge fund together in a few months. Like, what was I doing in high school? I thought I was like a smart kid. Like, oh, I'm taking community college classes at the same time.
No, good for you. Yeah, that worked out well.
Smart. Yeah. I'm not, millions of dollars wealthy.
Dude, somebody's got to help this guy get over his shyness. Because...
Oh, I love that that's what you took away from this story.
Oh, yeah,
because you want him to get pussy, right?
I'm not saying anything. I haven't said a word, okay? But I'm just saying, Mohammed, look into it, okay? I mean, you're going to want... How's this line? Hey, I have a BMW. I can't drive yet. You want to help me with that? Okay, come on. I don't even know what 8 figures is. I have to, try to imagine how many... 8 figures, right? This kid is so rich. He's got, if he wants, you've got the American dream right there for you, Mohammed. Take it. Take it.
What I took away from this story is not sexual in any way, shape, or form. What I
Really?
took away
Surprising.
from it was, if he can do it at 17, then I can do it at 28. Like, what am I doing with my life right now?
Agree to disagree. No, here's what I mean.
What?
Look, I'm sure was incredibly smart and et cetera. He also got lucky. So don't go be like, oh, well, I can do it too. Sure, I'm going to go trade. Oh, I got a little bit of money. I'm going to go trade it and turn it into $75 million. No, you're not. You're going to lose your money. Okay, so be cool. Don't think that this is a 1 in a million. It's literally more than 1 in a million, right? It's a very, very low odds that you would have hit it like this. And you don't know anything about Wall Street.
Well, maybe I can learn. I'm a quick learner.
Yeah.
I think you don't want me to leave the company, so you don't want me to become wealthy.
I'm just, I'm this close to being panicked about you making 8 figures and leaving the company by doing Wall Street trading. I just can't help but think, if I was 17 and I had tens of millions of dollars.
Are we going back to this?
We are. Oh, hot knife, meat, butter. Okay. Oh, man. Step aside, Butch.
Remember, Cenk, don't jerk and drive.
I hear you, sister. All right, Mohammed, this whole idea of setting up the hedge fund and stop it. Cut it out. Okay, you're done, son. 75, right?
76, I believe.
$76 million? Dude, you don't need
72.
72. You don't need another dime, Mohammed. Okay, let it go. Move on to other stuff. Dude, you're on a boat. You don't even know it. You're on a boat. Okay? The difference between 72 million and 720 million is almost nothing. Okay? There's nothing that 72 million can't buy you that you don't want as a 17-year-old. Go get a yacht, park it in South Beach. You could live the greatest life ever. I almost want to be this guy's personal counselor. And don't get me wrong, there'll be a lot of guys trying to rip you off for no money. Call me, Mohammed. I'll tell you how to spend it. I probably won't. But anyway, this is my counseling. Go forward. You're on a boat. Okay. We're out of time, so I'm going to read the members of the day for you guys. Reach back here for my trusty iPad. Robert Lofthouse is member number 1692. And member number 2215 is Jordan Kestner, okay? And everybody remember, you can be like Robert and Jordan too, especially over the next couple of weeks when you can get membership for just $1. Literally unprecedented deal because we've never done it before, and knowing how cheap we are, we probably will never do it again, okay? So first month of membership will be for $1, okay? Just until New Year's Eve. Clock strikes midnight, you all turn into pumpkins, or this offer turns into a pumpkin, and Dave Kohler presses a button, and it's done. Okay, so jump in it. Okay, $1 for membership. We're going to do the post game for the members. I have a decent number of stories.
All right.
So we'll get a little racy. We'll have a little fun. We'll see you in the post game. Bye bye. Now, we've decided we're going to go with an Anna story. It is dramatic. It involves a car accident she was in. I would like to note for the record, before we do that I've decided that I like alcohol.
You've already talked about this a
No,
little
I
bit.
know,
Yeah.
but now just a quick note. I was walking by our bar. We have a bar in the office, which is pretty cool, right? Yeah. And I've never walked by alcohol before and thought, yummy, right? I just thought, like, alcohol is alcohol. I literally say that in the movie Mad as Hell, right?
Yeah.
But now I've kind of gotten into it, and as I walked by the bar, I was like, wonder if I should drink some of that after the show.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's some chance that we're stumbling onto a problem, the beginning of a problem here.
What's your favorite? Like, what's your go-to drink?
I'm drinking a lot of whiskey lately.
Really?
Like a little scotch, you know what I'm saying? A little single malt action. Yeah.
That
Swirl
sounds
it around a
terrible.
little bit. No, wrong. Excellent.
That's a man's drink.
And it turns out I'm a man.
Okay.
Okay.
But you used to be a little bit, you're my boss, so I want to use a good word that expresses what I mean, but not in a vulgar way. Like a pansy with alcohol before. Like he used to have
You have failed in your mission.
he used to have like a beer or two, and then you'd get all wild. Like, and now you're drinking whiskey, like straight up.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
Good for you.
No, but I'm still soft. Don't get me wrong.
Soft is a better word.
Okay, yes, your word was un-PC, and I denounce and reject it. Okay, as Jesus can attest to, I was at my wife's friend's birthday party yesterday, or on Saturday night. Not birthday, a Christmas party. We do it every year, right? And I started drinking some whiskey, and I got a little liquored up. Okay, I'm like, I like this party more now. Yeah, let's trade presents, right? Anyway, I sent some inappropriate text messages to Jesus. I say that now because I've already deleted them.
That's hilarious.
Okay, now the rest of the story. Okay, your car accident.
Okay, so I was driving and I was distracted because
Oh, were you jerking and driving?
I got mad at myself and I was like, why do I work so hard? Fuck it. I don't want to work so hard anymore, right? I'm going to enjoy my fucking life and stop worrying about, I got to save for this and I got to make sure I get everyone nice gifts. No one gets me nice gifts, so why am I going to go out of my way to get everyone else nice gifts?
That'll show up. Fuck them.
No, but like...
Well, that's part of what's wrong with Christmas, right? We are like driving ourselves crazy and endangering ourselves to have enough money to buy nonsense presents for other people because of this made-up holiday.
Well, the real point of Thanksgiving was to celebrate the pilgrims that came here.
The pilgrims, the fucking pilgrims, no one cares.
I know. So like being in big crowds gives me a lot of anxiety. So I started feeling a lot of anxiety. I started sweating. Like I started getting really uncomfortable. There's like people throwing clothes everywhere. They're fucking pigs. Like the entire mall is a mess, right? And I'm like, I don't want to be in this chaos. And like, I should have just ordered stuff online. But then you don't know if you're going to get it in time, and then all of a sudden there's going to be an issue with like putting your credit card information with the website. It's going to get hacked.
Dude, you're
fucked.
right. You are stressing yourself the fuck out, man. Like you're so knee deep in Christmas. Like you came out the other side. You're in the North Pole right now. Like, there's two Persians in the studio right now, and they're both like, "Oh, you're fucked. You're definitely getting sued."
He was kind of hot too, actually.
Oh, really?
He had like big green eyes, but like olive skin and like the dark hair and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.